So when one of my contemporaries tries to mention me as a mobster, that I'm coming across as a mobster, he knows better.
Who do y'all think Stephen A was talking about?
But talking to these guys like you're a mob boss and they better watch what they say, there's harm in it.
Stephen A. Smith has been getting into it with everybody. But what else is new? Well, in this particular situation, all this stems from Stephen A. Smith little back and forth with Jaylen Brown. Now that became Stephen A. Smith versus Nick Wright, Stephen A. Smith versus McCants. Everybody just been on Stephen A. Smith head. Jaylen Brown and the Boston Celtics was up 3-1 in the first round and let the team come back and eliminate them. This was the first time in Boston Celtics history that they were up 3-1 in a series and still lost. For some odd reason, Jaylen Brown took to his podcast and said this was his favorite season ever. Not only did they have a 3-1 lead and still get eliminated, his co-star, Jason Tatum, was injured majority of the season. So your co-star, Jason Tatum, was injured majority of the season. Y'all lost a 3-1 lead in the first round after being championship contenders. And that was Jaylen Brown's favorite season? Makes no sense.
The group was a special group. I'm so proud of this group and the way we played. I wish we trusted that style of play a little bit more, but I know playoffs kind of shifted our rotations and what we wanted to do. But I'm so proud, and it was my favorite year of my basketball career. One, streaming with you guys, chat, was awesome. Like being able to talk to y'all was like therapy every single day. You know what I mean? I mean, not every day, like once a week.
Now, all this comes from Stephen A. Smith saying Jaylen Brown should kick back from being on this podcast for a minute and take a vacation because the things he's saying wasn't particularly good for his team.
Because it's Jaylen Brown as it pertains to this relationship with Jason Tatum, based off of what he said, this is his favorite year. You got knocked out in the first round. The Boston Celtics, one of the top two most storied franchises, if not the most storied franchise in the history of basketball annals, lost a 3-1 lead for the first time in its history, in its postseason history. And its star this season, and one of its top two preeminent stars over the last 7 years, goes on camera 24 hours after losing. Not 6 months, not 8 months, not the next season. Yeah. 24 hours after losing a 3-1 lead, and says this is his favorite. Was his favorite year.
3 games at home.
3 games at home. Now, you can't do that. And, oh, by the way, you want me to make it worse, Mike Wilbon? Kendrick Perkins just pointed out that Jason Tatum hasn't appeared on Jaylen Brown's program. You know where Jason Tatum was? Right here on First Take. Jason Tatum. So in other words, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum showed up on First Take before he showed up on your damn show. How? And then this is stuff that just flying over your head? You think nobody notices that hasn't happened? You're saying it's the year that Jason Tatum was down with an Achilles tear is your favorite year? Yeah. The year that Jason Tatum had to sit out, this closeout Game 7 because of the injury he incurred in Game 6. That's your favorite year? The year that you lose 3-1. Of all the stars in the history of the Boston Celtics, you the only one because you were driving a bus. Ain't nobody pointing to Jason Tatum. He was sitting.
Right.
He was sitting. He was in street clothes. You the only one. The only star in the history of the Boston Celtics that ever lost a 3-1 lead and surrendered it, and that's your favorite year. Why? Because you and your teammates developed better chemistry and camaraderie? Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Because you overcame adversity?
What happens? What's the remedy given all these things you're pointing out? But that's why I brought up the whole trade thing again. What are you going to do about it?
I don't mind. But what I'm saying is the first order of business is that he needs to be quiet and, like Big Perk said, go on vacation unless you're trying to get traded.
Now, with Jaylen Brown saying that this was his favorite season ever when your tag team partner, your partner in crime, Jason Tatum, was injured for most of the season, I don't think that was a good idea. Like me personally, if I was Jason Tatum, I would have felt some type of way like, damn, your favorite season was the season I was injured most of the season. I feel weird about that. Now with Stephen A being in the media, making a living off expressing himself and knowing what can help you or harm you when it comes to, content or whatever, or just speaking your mind, I feel like he had a valid point. I don't feel like that was a good idea for him to say that. And so by Stephen A. Smith telling him like, hey, relax, it's fresh off the fresh off the playoffs, fresh off y'all elimination. Some people had y'all as championship contenders, and y'all went out in the first round. That was fairly embarrassing. So just kick back for a minute and recuperate. I kind of agree with that because I don't think he was saying the best things for his team. Jaylen Brown didn't agree with that at all. Matter of fact, he said,
fuck Stephen A. Stephen A, Stephen B, Stephen C. Like, my offer still stands. You want me to be quiet and stop streaming? Well, I want you to be quiet and get off these networks, because you're not using your platform to do real journalism. You're using your platform to use clickbait. You're using your platform to, let's go back and let's use example A.
Now, do I agree with a lot of the points that Stephen A. Smith was making about Jaylen Brown? Yes, I do. But whenever you bring somebody up, you can't get mad on how they respond. You can't tell nobody what they consider disrespect or not. Now, if you bring somebody up and you say something in any kind of negative light, even if you telling them, hey, be quiet, if you're giving them direction, it's a possibility that they can take offense to it. So you can't get mad on how they respond to you because you brought them up in the first place. But Stephen A. Smith responded, and he feel like he didn't deserve all the negativity coming his way by Jaylen Brown.
Fuck Stephen A. I don't deserve that from you, bro. You're wrong. But I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm not going to do anything. What I'm going to do is remind you of what I said before. Despite your greatness throughout the years and being in 6 conference finals and 2 NBA finals and winning a championship and winning a finals MVP and a conference finals MVP and establishing yourself as one of the best two-way players in the entire NBA, if not the world right now. All the endorsements go to your teammate, Jayson Tatum. Why? None of them are coming in your direction to the degree that you deserve. Why not? Shoot deals, endorsement deals, or whatever. You're talking about me. Yeah, journalism, whatever. Hell, I got a commercial on TV right now with CarShield. Why don't you have those? This is not to malign or insult or anything. It's to point out, bro, there's a host of things that people are saying in the world of corporate America and beyond. Why haven't they embraced you more? Could it be that you're dogged and so resolute in your approach to things that you never think you're wrong? That you never think that there's something that you can alter or modify to do things differently? I had to do it. I had to look myself in the mirror and check myself on several occasions in my life. Which is why I don't get caught up in what you said and what people try to say in terms of me, people not rocking with me or whatever. I get paid to talk about y'all. I don't get paid to talk to y'all, but I never hesitate to talk to you if you want to talk. No matter what player it is, no matter what athlete it is, I don't back up.
Now, it's certain former players and sports analysts that has been, I'm not going to say they've been siding with Jaylen Brown, but they have been poking holes in some of the things that Stephen A. Smith has been doing. And though I disagree with Jaylen Brown taking offense to what Stephen A. Smith said, what Nick Wright said about Stephen A. isn't off base.
Once upon a time, Stephen A was a legitimately great reporter. Put every level of work in imaginable to where he's the biggest name in the space and still works as much as anybody in the business. At all times is working. But talking to these guys like you're a mob boss and they better watch what they say, there's harm in it. I know stuff. I know technically it's my job to report the things I know, but I know it and I just keep it in my back pocket in case I ever have to use it like the big joker in a spades game. Give me a break. If you have real information about Jason Tatum's feelings about Jaylen Brown, you should report it. If you have real information about the Celtics organization, how they feel about Jaylen Brown that you're just sitting on, yes, you should report it. The answer is not. Go to the mattresses and escalate. And it makes all of us look bad. And also, here's the other thing. You're the only guy who does it.
Now, the truth may hurt Stephen A. Smith, but you do that. You do that. You do got this aura like you a mob boss. I think that character you play on the soap opera been going to your head. You think you that.
But in the end, Jaylen Brown, be careful what you wish for. You really want me to start reporting on that level? You understand? Locker room? How the organization might think about you? How the city may feel about you? How Jason Tatum may or may not have feel about you? Sneaker deals, endorsement deals, the list goes on and on. The season is over, bro. You on Twitch trying to do what I do.
Now, Stephen A. Smith wasn't feeling what Nick Wright said, obviously, and he responded to him.
So when one of my contemporaries tries to mention me as a mobster, that I'm coming across as a mobster, he knows better. You can, once you figure out who I'm talking about, you can gauge his motives. He should be ashamed of himself. But I'll leave it alone and let him hang out with his crew. And he knows that I know who they are. Okay? The point that I'm making is that it's not me being a mobster. It's me highlighting that we all, as reporters, have access to an abundance of information, whether it's through players, coaches, executives, owners, agents, or even other journalists. Y'all got a community of people y'all communicate with as players, past, present, and future. What makes you think journalists don't have that? You think I can't pick up the phone and call a beat writer that used to cover the Washington Wizards? You think I don't know who used to cover the team?
Now, in my opinion, all this is just a misunderstanding. I truly believe that Stephen A. Smith didn't have malice intent. He was basically saying, come on, Jaylen Brown, you want to probably kick back and saying the things you're saying because it can ruin the team. It can ruin the camaraderie of your team. And if you've been following the NBA or the Boston Celtics, you know that the media has always been trying to put Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown against each other. Like, they've been trying to do that. And at one point, they were saying split them up, split them up. And with this and with the rhetoric that Jaylen Brown is coming with now, those conversations has been brought back up. And I do believe Jaylen Brown is saying these things because this is his favorite season thus far, because I believe he do want to be the star of the team. I think he do want to be a number one option, and I think he understands that that won't happen on the Boston Celtics, because not only do they believe that Jason Tatum is the better player, they believe that he's more marketable. So I do believe he wants to go somewhere else and start over, because this season was an example of what he can do when he's alone. Now, during the regular season, the Celtics surprised everybody, because not only was Jason Tatum injured, they traded a lot of the pieces they had that they won the championship with. So this was kind of looking like a bust. But Jaylen Brown far exceeded expectations in the regular season. But when it got to the playoffs, it showed, hey, maybe he isn't a number one option, especially being up 3-1 in the first round. It really made no sense for the Boston Celtics to lose. And so if Jaylen Brown was taking it as Stephen A. Smith saying, shut up and dribble, athletes tend to get offended when that rhetoric comes up. So if that's how he took Stephen A. Smith information, then I understand, why he was mad. But In all actuality, I believe Stephen A. Smith was trying to help him. I'm not going to say today's athlete is so sensitive, even though this was sensitive. And if he would have just sat back and thought about it, or if he would have had people around him that are not yes man, I'm not saying all the people are around him are yes man, but I think someone could have been around him to tell him like, nah, Stephen A. Smith didn't mean it like that. He didn't mean it like that. But chances are he don't got people around him like that, because if they are like that, they take the risk of Jaylen Brown saying, whose side are you on? And if that's the breadwinner and that's taking care of you and your family, you don't want him having those thoughts about you. But hey, players back in the day probably was just as sensitive. They just didn't have this to showcase it. But anyway, get in the comments and tell me what you think. Do you think Stephen A. Smith is going too far? He acting like a mob boss? Do you think everybody else like Nick Wright, McCants, Mace, do you think they need to just stay out of it? Or do you think Jaylen Brown is trying to get traded? That's the biggest conversation to me. Is Jaylen Brown trying to get traded? Get in the comments and tell me what you think. But anyway, this was another one like the other one. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. I am Mega. I'm up out of here.